What's up, everybody? We are back here on Roundtable Wrestling Radio, and joining us is one of the biggest names that we've had on Roundtable Wrestling Radio. Of course, co-founder of TNA Wrestling, now founder of Global Force Wrestling, former heavyweight champion, multi-time, wrestled all over the world, the one and only Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening to this. Thanks for having me on, and looking forward to talking Global Force Wrestling and just about anything else you want to talk about as it relates to wrestling, or we don't even have to talk wrestling. Let's just chat.
Well, sir, actually, I wanted to get your thoughts right off the bat. We had recently we had a very big loss in the world of wrestling, and of course, China. And you infamously worked with China in one of the greatest angles during the Attitude Era. What are your thoughts about the loss of such a great one of the pioneers of professional wrestling?
Very sad. Very, very, very sad. And I've been obviously asked this quite a bit. I've been doing quite a bit of media to promote our shows and everything else related to Global Force Wrestling. But obviously, this is a topic that people want to talk about, and it's no secret that China had her ups and downs in life, like all of us. Her times were more extreme than others, and she was a gentle soul, and just really sad. A very, very sad situation, gone too soon. But life is life, and things happen, and I like to remember China on a much better note, and when I've been asked, I can't really say any more than that's already been said as far as trailblazers and, kicking doors down in this industry and really setting the tone. And we're sort of seeing the fruits of her labor just today. But the one thing that I always like to almost personally relate to the situation, and I just came from Germany, I've told this story a couple of times, is that my very last match in WWF was against China, and her very last match in her career was against me in TNA. So our paths have obviously crossed. But the one thing I like to remember in that people, I don't think, really realize how good she was. She had the look, she had the persona. She was as important as any member of DX. She was one of 4 or 5 people, in my opinion, that really, really shaped and defined the Attitude Era. And we all know how successful that was. But the one thing that people, I don't think, give her enough credit for, what she did in the ring, she obviously wasn't a high flyer and wasn't this technical whiz and all this. But what she did very, very well, knew when to do it, had really good timing, and just knew how to connect with that audience. And she was a very, very, very special talent in regards to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to turn my attention to your personal career. You, we've talked a lot about your career on our show. One of the things that stands out to me is the fact that, going back to the early days of TNA for a second, the NWA title. You held the NWA title, and you actually wrestled all over the world. You were kind of one of the very few people that, at that time anyway, maintained a world champion persona, if you will. How was that in the early days of TNA to represent a single title literally around the world? Because, nowadays you're the world champion of Monday nights, or you're the world champion of Friday nights, but you were actually the world's champion, like Ric Flair was in a lot of ways.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. The industry has evolved so much over the last, and my family's been in this business over 70 years, dates back to the 1940s.
Yes.
So I remember, without question, that they called the traveling champions, Harley Race, the Briscoes, the Funks, and you can go back even before that went from territory to territory. And just as any form of business, it has to evolve with the times. And when you went to the big two national and WCW and WWF, as cable television came along, that evaporated literally. It seems, as you look back on history, overnight. Then it became the WWF champion or WCW champion. And then as things, progressed, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, I was given that opportunity by the NWA. And then, as TNA went along, they branched, and we parted ways with those guys. But There was an era there that, yes, I defended it in Japan and Australia, in the United Kingdom, obviously across the states, and so it was a pretty cool era, I'll say, of my career that I enjoyed very much, and that's something at Global Force Wrestling that you can't go back and relive history, but you can certainly take pages out of the books and chapters that were written in professional wrestling, and at Global Force Wrestling, that's a big part of why we wanted to form alliances with promotions in Japan and Mexico and South Africa and Australia and all through Europe, and to go and have a championship match against we'll call it a quote unquote a non-company man. And I think at the end of the day, the fans win out of that because they want to see those type matchups.
That'd be
fresh
really cool.
Matchups with talent from different promotions.
Absolutely. Since we are pressed for time, I just wanted to get your overall thoughts before we get into the new promotion, which is awesome because we actually just had Magnus on the show. We've had several talents from both TNA and Global Force Wrestling. Your overall thoughts on the product of TNA, because everybody's curious, because as a wrestling fan, I watched the very first episode of TNA Wrestling on pay-per-view, which I paid $10 for.
I love it. I appreciate it.
What is your overall thoughts on and I don't know if you're aware, but I'm sure you must be, of the constant battle on the internet, because you guys came along when the internet was really taking off. So it was a much different scenario than Nitro and Raw. TNA has always had this negativity. What is your overall thoughts on the company and the history of TNA and what you did with it and just the overall concept of TNA wrestling?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I was a wrestling fan before I was a wrestler, and certainly before I was a promoter. So I want to see all promotions do well. And
yes,
it's been well documented. It's been well documented. TNA's had its ups and downs, and yes, you are spot on in saying that the era of complete transparency, social media, and digital, and to say Steve Jobs changed the world is, in my opinion, quite a bit of an understatement for that technology, because I'm a father of 5, and kids today live off their phones. Well, hell, adults today live off their phones.
Right.
It's how we consume things, but it's that constant exchange of communication, whether it's Snapchat and you share files that way, Instagram, Twitter, all of that going with it. And wrestling fans, I love them. They put groceries on my table for a long, long time. So I love them, and I'm one of them. But with that being said, yes, there's a enormous negative connotation that just continues to go. And as I said, I want to see them do good. I wish them nothing but the best. Was every minute I spent in that company great? No, but that's unrealistic to think if you're on any place of employment. But I want them to do good. But it seems that they've gone through an enormous battle and change and the roster change, and Eric and Bobby, close personal friends of mine that date back to year one of TNA.
Yes.
There's obviously a lot going on there that I'm on the outside looking in. It goes without saying that I left there and closed that chapter of my life December of 2013. Went back and had the Hall of Fame and the King of the Mountain deal, and then we parted ways, and Global Force got exposure, and I think they got what they wanted out of the deal. But I wish them nothing but the best. That goes without saying.
Do you have a sense of pride, even though you're not associated anymore? Do you have a sense of pride though that guys like AJ Styles, like you said, Bobby Roode, Eric Young, that they're on the world stage now? I mean, at WrestleMania, for example, that AJ Styles is competing for the world's title, and AJ is, for everybody that can say whatever they want, but he is a TNA guy. Mm-hmm. That's what we see when we see AJ Styles. Do you have a sense of pride that these guys are doing so well?
Well, I couldn't be happier for all three of them, and you put Doc and Carl in that as well.
Yes,
when you look at
Samoa Joe,
what AJ has done, and when he stepped out at Royal Rumble and the entire arena is chanting his name, and then that carried on and fantastic matches against Jericho. I'm happy for AJ because I know in his mind, it goes without saying, I was a believer in a North Georgia kid that goes way back from year one.
Yes.
Everyone knows I've been a big believer in AJ. He just needed the platform, the stage. Couldn't be happier for him. It certainly validates a lot of things that in my mind I believed over the years. And Bobby Roode and Eric Young have an enormous amount of talent. Doc and Carl are right there side by side with AJ. So I'm really happy for those guys. And they've got an exciting year in front of them. It goes without saying.
Yeah, and obviously switching gears to Global Force, like we said, we had Magnus on the show, and he had nothing but positive things to say about the direction of Global Force Wrestling. What, like you mentioned earlier, from what we have seen and read, you're exchanging talent, you're working with different promotions. What does the future look like for Global Force by way of television? Are we going to see this product on television?
Yes, yeah, and I have said this that I almost at this point sound like a broken record because patience isn't in my DNA. But to do things right,
yes,
you have to really methodically and strategically roll things out, and it doesn't happen overnight because I'm sitting on a line that I've been told way back, going over a year and a half ago. You're not launching a television show; you're launching a brand.
right.
And with that going said, obviously I named the company Global Force for a reason because in this day and age of media, you have to be a global entity. You're no longer a wrestling promotion just in the United States. You have to be a global entity. So step by step, we put things together, created the global presence, went to Las Vegas, taped the episodes, the first 16 of AMP, signed an international agent, and I'm giving you the step by step, but it's a bullet point by bullet point.
Right.
And then we partnered up, and quite frankly, I had no idea that it would take 8 months, but we partnered with A. Smith Company, a production company out of L.A. They were at our first set of tapings, and one thing led to another, and, they're at the top of the top of production companies, not just in the United States, in the world. American Ninja Warrior, Spartan Race,
Oh, wow.
Hell's Kitchen. I could go on and on and on, the television shows. And so we have collaborated. We got some really cool, innovative things, and we cannot wait to roll them out in 2016. If you are a fan of, not just a Global Force, if you're a fan of professional wrestling, I think you guys are really going to be excited about where we're heading. And we will let you know when the time is right. But stay tuned. But I appreciate the patience, for one, and the support, too.
What is the idea going forth to get Global Force talent to be Global Force talent and only Global Force talent?
That is something that, you cannot run an operation without having a core roster of Global Force talent.
Right.
Not just champions, but yes, you have to have your core roster. But I never want to get away from the mentality of talent exchanges with other promotions because it sets us apart. B, it gives dream matchup for fans, and C, it gives a freshness from an ongoing basis that you have and I'm using this as an example. You have a Rev Pro champion from the UK. You might have a AAA champion from Mexico, or a New Japan, or a NOAH, or whatever, and you respect the fact that they're champions in other promotions, and it just gives the fans a little bit more to bite on. To me, credibility that there was a mentality, and obviously I was a part of it through the years. That over the last 20 years, you worked for a promotion, you acted as if almost other promotions don't exist.
Right.
That's not reality. That's just not reality, especially today with how transparent social media has made all of us become. So no, we will continue, and that's a big part of why I really did that is the very first step of creating alliances with the promotions on the world, and obviously that opened up doors, and New Japan came to us, and Wrestle Kingdom 9 was what a way to make a splash as far as our first show that we got to executive produce.
Yes.
And getting Jim Ross on board, it goes without saying, just, he's, to call him a Hall of Famer is almost an insult because yes, he's a Hall of Famer without question. But what he brings to a broadcast today in 2016, in my opinion, is unparalleled.